Hello everyone. How are you today? Welcome to today's webinar, Animating Dreams, a deep dive into the world of animation. I'm Rachel Mali, your moderator for this session, hosted by Africa Digital Media Institute, ADMI. We're excited to have you here as we explore the exciting world of animation. So before we dive in, let me briefly introduce ADMI. We are a creative media and technology training institute, and we work to give Africa's creatives and techies the training, mentorship, and the platform they need to turn their passion into a profitable profession. We offer practical courses in film and TV, animation, graphic design, sound engineering, music production, photography, multimedia, and digital marketing. So a quick note of housekeeping, please make sure your microphones are muted to minimize any background noise. And also, please feel free to use the chat function for any questions or comments. We really do value your participation in this session. So I wouldn't want to waste a lot of time. I want us to dive in straight to our main program. So today we have been joined by an expert. I'm sure we already know him, Mr. Benjamin Waithaka. He's a seasoned professional in the animation industry with over 18 years of experience. He's an Autodesk certified professional and co-founder of Blue Splines Studios Kenya, known for its work with clients like Kenya National Highways Authority, Vision 2030, and more. So Benjamin, thank you for joining us today. Karibu sana, and you're most welcome.
Thank you very much. Let me just yeah, I hope you can hear me as well as see me. So welcome very much. Thank you, Rachel. Did you just say 18 years? That makes me sound old, you know. But yeah, it's around that kind of timing. So welcome to today's webinar, and we will be discussing on just a deep dive into animation. But specifically, I'll be looking at especially 3D animation, and I'll be explaining why 3D. Mostly that's what I specialize in, and it's quite versatile, as we're going to come see. So let me share my screen here. So let me just share that. Yeah, I hope you guys can see my screen over there. And yeah, if you can see it, please just shout something.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Thank you very much. So so generally what I'm talking about is just a deep dive into animation itself, and I'll be concentrating a lot in terms of 3D. You're going to come see why. I'll talk a bit on 2D, but generally animation as a whole, the way it is. So I'll just jump into it because I'm sure you guys know what animation is, and if you don't know, it's an artistic style within the film genre, because animation is not a genre, it's just a style of storytelling. It's just a style of displaying images and videos. And now once it comes to 3D animation, as you have on your screen, so sometimes it's referred to as 3D or CGI, which is computer-generated imagery. 3D animation is a type of animation that uses computer-generated images to create animated scenes. Now, compared to 2D animation or traditional animation, 3D has much more depth and it looks much more realistic, sort of depending on the artistic style that you are going for. Now, majority of animated features and sort of feature movies and short animated skits today are created using 3D animation. And these are rapidly growing industry. It's really growing in leaps and bounds. Now, if you look at it, the most popular, 3D has become most popular than ever. And a lot of animations are coming in Hollywood. They're actually becoming feature-length movies, and they are doing really well. They are really doing very well. Now, animation is also used for many special effects in live-action films. So if you're a lover of films, in the last, let's say, 10 years or so, even towards 5 years, 10 years or so, you've watched a lot of animations. Because most of what you've been seeing, most of it during compositing, they're able to take computer-generated images and composite them over live shot. It's cheaper and safer, okay? And you have the artistic direction. Like, for example, cars crashing, you can direct how that happens if you're going to be using animation. So I'm going to be using the word animation when it comes to things like VFX, sort of everything, because that's what people know. But technically, animation is just moving things along, okay? Technically, it's being able to create the illusion of motion. That's what animation is. So in the whole workflow, you have modeling, you have texturing. Now, modeling is whereby you're able to create whatever it is. Like, for example, you want to create a car. It's like using clay or wireframe to try and just fashion that, or even sculpt. That's modeling. And then texturing is where now you give it its surface, how it will look at the end of the day. And then also when it comes to now animation bit, now that's where you move it around. So you get digitized characters. Maybe there's an actor, then a digital version of that actor, and then they can be able to do stunts and things like that. So the field of 3D animated video and computer interactive games in its short history has really grown. And this is all due to advancements in technology and also the incredible expansions of platforms where you can showcase this form of art, from video on demand platforms, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. There are so many areas where you can be able to showcase this. And even a lot of websites around catering for artists, both 2D, 3D, things like ArtStation, Behance, quite a number out there that you can be able to showcase this art. And technology has played a major, major role in it. Now, for 3D animation, it has a long history, a very long history. But Toy Story is one of those things that came out in 1995. We had Toy Story coming out. And once Toy Story came out, you'll notice there are a lot of things out there that people were not really convinced that it would work. You know, they were not convinced that it would actually work. So let me switch these a bit. Yeah, there we are. I hope, yeah, that's what I was looking for. Thank you. So people were really not convinced that 3D would work. Guys were not convinced until Toy Story came out from Pixar. Okay, it's Disney Pixar. Pixar by John Lasseter. This thing was written in the, I think in the film, and guys started getting it. Now, ever since that time, that is 1995, the style has taken over the world. And having been relatively a niche format for 25 years or so, 3D animation has recently become the norm, because normally it was just for big studios, major studios. But now, every other person, every other artist, it has become highly accessible to very many people. Now, if you look at the whole idea is that the demand for this format has skyrocketed, and we only see its popularity increase with time because of the kind of softwares that are coming out. We even have open source softwares like Blender. We have a lot of companies that create sort of these animation softwares like Autodesk, things like Maya, 3ds Max, student licensing coming in, lots of colleges coming up, like now ADMI, we'll be able to teach this art. And it has become quite accessible to a lot of people. And as time goes by, it has found its way into almost every other facet of our creative economy here in Kenya and worldwide as well. Now, with 3D, Okay, why 3D? Because the question would be, when we are talking animation, there's 2D animation, there's 3D animation. Now, there are other types. Like for 3D, we started with something called claymation or stop motion animation, but we're just going to come directly to 3D itself. So we are talking 3D and 2D over here. So those are the two main ones we are looking at. So for 3D, it comes with extra elements of realism. Now, get this. While 2D animation does not have, it does have an undeniable charm. It has some kind of a charm. I grew up with Beauty and the Beast. I grew up with Pinocchio. I grew up with Fantasia. I grew up with Donald Duck. All those kind of traditional 2D cartoons from Walt Disney are really lovely ones. And it has its charm. It does have its charm. But 3D animation allows animators to make things look more organic, like what you're having on screen there. And when that happens, the details, the texture, the increased range of motion, because now for these, because of its third dimension, there's an increased range of motion and the way we read them. They are like digital puppets. So we have, it's better. Okay, through this realistic look, there comes an opportunity to connect with the viewer more effectively, unlike 2D. Okay, still you could do this in 2D, but up to a certain limited level. But this one will draw the audience more, okay, to what is happening on screen, okay, adding that extra layer of empathy and giving rise to an opportunity to connect deeper and create a stronger association with your audience, because you look at it and it's like clay that is alive. Okay. For 2D still, you can get there, because if you're doing 2D, it's more of the stylistic look. What are you going for? All right. Like what are you having on screen right here? It looks nice. It looks lovely. It's a stylistic kind of a feel, but actually it is still 3D. 3D. And most people ask me the question, is it 2D animation? Okay, that's a question I get a lot, and it all just depends on the project requirements, okay, and the desired output. Okay, so what is the project? What is the desired output of this project, and also the budget? Because for 3D, of course, the cost implication is slightly higher. Okay, for 2D animation, you can create that more stylized look with a lower budget costs, okay, because all you need, maybe on the base, all you need is pen and paper and maybe software that is quite affordable, actually. But when it comes to 3D, okay, you can create more realistic things, more realistic images, but with higher production cost, because again, it depends on your hardware. It heavily depends on your hardware and your technology, although it's getting better as we move along. Like, for example, rendering, well, depends. Those accurate renders, non-biased renders, are going to take ages to calculate, all right? But there are others, well, that might not take that long. Although now, with the event of gaming engines coming into play, for example, things like Unreal Engine and Unity, we are able to have real-time rendering is actually, it's becoming easier as we go along. But at times it's still out of the reach of many, because you still need a powerful GPU at the end of the day. So, but does that mean that 2D is dead? Does that mean that 2D animation is dead? The answer is no. The 2D animation industry is growing steadily, and with the with increasing demand across the range of different sectors, with the rise of popularity of online videos and the increased use of animation in education, marketing, 2D is likely to continue enjoying some popularity, and it's going to be a lucrative field for years to come, because there is none better than the other. It all depends on what kind of project you're working on. For 2D animation and 3D animation, 12 for both, whether you're doing 3D, whether you're doing 2D, they are both. Now, this simple model over here. It's done in Maya, but rendered in a 2D kind of a feel over there. And so the question would be, should I just learn 3D and render it out as 2D because we have the ability to make it look either sketched or whatever? No, so which one should I learn first? Well, if that is the question you're asking, I would say you should study both. Okay, both are good. Both complement each other. If you are bent on choosing one style, okay, then select one and stick to it, and you'll find it enjoyable. But 2D generally appeals to those who are more artistic in nature. If you're really good at drawing, then 2D is going to be easier for you. If you're not really very good at drawing, 3D will still work because it's a bit different. It's not like drawing, it's not like sculpting. It's a bit different, though you still need your 2D skills, fundamental in things like drawing, okay, fundamentals in a bit of 2D animation. And usually in ADMI, you have to follow all those courses. If you're doing our diploma, we ensure you do your foundation in 2D animation and the fundamentals of drawing so that they can help you later in your animation production process in the whole workflow. Things like storyboarding, creating animatics, although you can still create them in 3D, but those skills are really going to help you. And even designing your own characters. It's easier to design them on pen and paper first before you actually model them or try to create them in your 3D software. And it's highly encouraged that you do so. So generally, learning both would be okay, or aspects of one. You need aspects of 2D for you to jump into 3D. So like what you're having here is, this is Maya, okay, this cartoon is also Maya, right there, okay, Maya, and this cartoon here. Now, it's just a shader, really. Once you've done your 3D in Maya, it's called Toon Shader. If you're into 3D Max, it's called Ink and Paint. If you're working in Blender, it's called Grease Pencil. Although in Blender also, you could as well create your own Toon Shader. All you need to do is, I hope I have some Blender lovers here. Just get rid of your normal shader, BSDF shader principle, get a gradient ramp, attach some texture to it, and then play with it around, and you can get yourself a feel of cell shading. That would work. For Cinema 4D, there's something called Sketch and Toon. So it's the same. It gives you that feel. It reacts to light. It reacts to reflections. So you don't, unlike traditional 2D, you don't have to start drawing the reflection. The software is going to do that for you. And that's why I favor a lot of 3D, because once you create your model, then you can reuse it in consequent projects without any hindrances. For 2D, you'll have to create the entire turnaround if you want a very versatile character. So yeah, so generally that is why I favor one. I favor the 3D, although 2D is still quite relevant. In the 3D field, as we're going to come see, it is wider. It is far, far much wider. And as the years go by, as technology changes, it's opening up new doors as we move along. Now, it's a medium of storytelling. Now, I have a few projects that I've worked on, so just a few over here which I would want to talk about. So I love African stories. Been working on this project for a while, to be released soon. Purely 3D. It suited my needs totally because of the kind of character I was looking for. It's called Echoes of Wisdom. Then there's a whole other story which is still under the process of working, still under my label, which was Blue Spline Studios, though it closed down in 2020. But we're still working on this. So still some African stories, working in conjunction with Kambi Bonzo over there in terms of coming up with some of these characters and getting them to work in a 3D space. It allowed us to do that because had we needed to do a live shot, it would have been more expensive, scouting for locations and things like that. But here we were able to art direct and create these locations in a way that fitted the kind of story that we have. So others like this one here, also purely 3D, but you notice the backgrounds here done in 2D. Even our storyboarding phase was done the same way. So generally, these are 3D models giving you that feel. If you look at the feel I was going for, the skin texture and all that, the kind of detail we were going for. So that's why I jumped into the whole 3D bandwagon and able to create this one. The renderings are done in the Unreal Engine. The Unreal Engine over here allows for now real-time rendering over there. So rendering not a major problem. So you can get all these effects, you know, from blowing leaves.
Benjamin, we can't hear you.
The key thing is to be able now to code these, either C++, although for artists now, there's something called Blueprints, which is a visual coding language, which is actually very easy to work with. So the Unreal Engine is going to give you the perfect platform as a finishing area, so that you can either make your animation, render it out in real time, make it into an interactive application, or make it into a game. And usually we have a unit in our training, especially at ADMI, we have a unit that dives really deep into the Unreal Engine, allowing you to do all these things. Now, apart from just being able to create these cartoons and all that, what else can you do with 3D? Does it really work as well as we are talking about? What else? How else can it open doors? Well, it also is used within the motion graphics for TV, film, any kind of motion graphics that you'd want to have, like what we're having on screen. And so you're not limited. The reach in digital space is very wide. And a lot of places in the digital space are heavily reliant on 3D animation. So creating all these logos, that would work quite well with 3D animation because of the kind of materials we have and the kind of lighting. You know, you can feel the glass, you can feel the glow, you can feel all these things, the lighting, everything. So you're able to have all that in one application. So it all depends on how creative you get with it. So apart from that, you could also jump into architectural visualization. And 3D animation is really heavily used in this area. Very heavily used. And a lot of clients are jumping into the bandwagon of this, and also potential contractors and all that. They usually love the idea of having architectural visualization done in 3D before they do the actual project. So what are the main advantages? Why would anybody do this before they do their main kind of project? Well, if you look at the materials and everything that you're seeing like on screen here, okay, very fine, very clean materials, very proper lighting over there. One of the main advantages is that it gives a comprehensive view of the project. So you have a comprehensive view of the project and allows the client and the architect to think similarly. Because if an architect has an idea, you know, and the client has a different idea, how do they marry these two? Well, if they come into the 3D space, they are able to see and think similarly, okay? So that it's like bringing out your ideas. You have your ideas in your head, but you need to bring them out in a way that another person can be able to understand what you're talking about. So that's exactly why they do it in 3D, so that the client literally sees the future, okay, of the project and understands very clearly that they would like to fix, what they would like to fix or change. So from something like this, what we are seeing on screen, you can decide now the pool to move a few meters towards that direction, change the bar towards this other side. So you can do that interactively and quickly, and also changing things like the colors of maybe the chairs over here, maybe the colors of the tiles, maybe the finishing. It's easy for them to come into an agreement and a consensus as to how the project is going to look at in the end. Now, improved visualization of finished buildings and products. Okay, and you can be able to check for errors which might have occurred during the design process. Because as you're designing, you could get a few errors here and there. Like, for example, maybe a window was placed in the wrong place or slightly in a place where it was not needed. So it's good to have this fast. So it saves a lot of costs. Instead of getting the house, painting it, and deciding to change the paint later, you change it within your 3D software, so that if you look at the design and the visualization that has been given by the 3D artist and the finished product, they should essentially look similar. Okay, so yeah, so architectural visualization is an area that is heavily reliant on 3D animation. And also, if you go now to another field like product visualization, most of the product visualizations we see, 3D plays a heavy and major role, because you can art direct. Like what you're seeing on the screen, you can really art direct where the coffee will pour. Doing this live shot would take a lot of work, okay? And the lighting also, quite a bit of work. But should you do it in 3D, then it is easy to get this to work very nicely. So product visualization is another area that heavily depends on 3D animation. Now, apart from that, we also have advertisements like vehicle renders and things like that, being able to create cars and car adverts. You don't want to create a very nice, expensive car and then you take it on the rocks. So majorly 3D helps to create all these nice things. As you look at this, you notice it's quite realistic. That's the kind of realism that we are looking at, and you're going for the materials, the lighting, the sheen, everything, the textures. You can literally feel the texture on the road. So generally, this is something that most advertisers would want. And even for feature films, this is what they're using. They're using a lot of this to be able to substitute maybe car chases and things like that. They can be able to substitute them with CG kind of objects that are created in CG. So that is another area. This one here, you look at that, properly composited, okay? And it gives you the feel that you want. Should you need any changes, they can be done also on the fly. So it's another area that can be able to be opened by the whole issue of 3D. So in terms of VFX and compositing, you notice like what you're seeing on screen. And these days, you don't even have to create the entire model of your actor or actress. If you go to Unreal Engine, there's something called MetaHuman. MetaHuman can pick your face and recreate now your head from that with very high detailed textures from the color of your skin. So it's very easy for you to get the digital doubles if you understand how to work with MetaHuman, if you understand how to model 3D characters. Again, it goes back to your training and how well you got the foundation of your 3D as a 3D artist. How well was your modeling foundation, texturing foundation? It comes into play. Even though now you're using Unreal Engine, all that is going to come into play. So yeah, so you get digital doubles like what we're seeing on screen now. You notice it's all CG, okay? The whole scene is actually just 3D. Okay, the whole scene is 3D, and it allows you now to really tell your story, especially for filmmakers. It allows you to really tell your stories without any hindrance whatsoever. So remember, it's the same tool. We are using the same tool to do all this. Okay, it's the same exact tool. Now, open source things like Unreal Engine, it's even free. Okay, so for you to be able to render, but Unreal Engine, you can't really do a lot, most of these, but you'll have to bring in your elements from other DCC apps, Maya, Max, Blender, Cinema 4D, Houdini. You have to bring them in there. But the principles that work are similar within these softwares. So all this purely a lot of 3D for VFX and compositing. Now, for those of you who watched Deadpool, so you've watched a lot of animations over there. And usually, if you look at the finishing over there, the finishing there is quite good. But it's 3D. You've been watching a lot of animation over there. So you can venture into that field. Apart from that, if we go into the interactive field of 3D, we are looking at things like augmented reality. Okay. So what is augmented reality? It's an interactive experience of a real world environment where the objects that reside in the real world are enhanced by computer generated perceptual information. So it's like you're projecting something that is not there. So you have a table and you want to project, like this book, for example, and you're projecting the solar system over there. Okay, and you can explore the solar system in 360. We are even going further, and people are even shopping using augmented reality and looking at how things change. So like what you're having on screen right now, you can create an augmented reality whereby somebody enters a room and they move their phone around and they're seeing the furniture, the colors on the wall, and all that. And they can change that on the fly also if they wish to. And there are many applications to do this, but Unreal Engine also does that, and we train it at ADMI. So yeah, you can use Unreal Engine to create augmented reality. Like Pokemon, for those of you who remember Pokemon Go, there we are. It's still augmented reality. So it is CG elements composited on live footage, okay, essentially. CG elements composited on live footage. They can be animated, okay, they can be static, and they can even be interactive where you change colors and things like that. Then there is virtual reality, okay, which is VR. Now, this one you need the VR goggles over there to be able to wear and interact in that world over there, purely over there, like gaming and all that. And I'm sure most of you have interacted with this virtual reality over there. So 3D, again, these models, all these models are 3D. They are made with the exact same softwares that we've been looking at. So what are the demands, okay, of 3D animation? Well, you'll notice that the demands are extraordinary focus and discipline. You really need to be disciplined to get into that space. You really need to have a lot of focus. It does take time, and the learning curve is a bit steep to begin with, especially when you're beginning. It's not a very easy thing to do, but as you learn, depending on how your training is packaged, okay, depending on how you're introduced to it, that is how you're going to actually be able to move really fast, or it can hinder you along the way as you move. If you jump some areas, well, chances are it's going to hinder you. But if you come in step by step, okay, step by step learning, project oriented learning, because what we do at ADMI is that from that first time you come in, we are looking at the entire production process from the beginning, from the concept all the way to the finished product. So our curriculum is tailored that way. Okay, so, and it's not only that, there's also entrepreneurship in it, because you need to sell your product. There is career launchpad. How are you able to package yourself and package your project in a professional way to be able to sell? So you're looking at the entire process over there. So it demands a lot of focus and discipline. Now, if you look at it, you need to adjust to the numerous challenges that are posed by the steep learning curve associated with learning 3D, because most people are used to looking at something and you think, for example, if you love cake, I love cake, and people think that the way you eat cake and enjoy it is the same way the person baking it enjoys it. No, they are under heat and stress. Okay, so it's the same with 3D. You need to have that discipline. You need to have that focus. The softwares are there. Okay, even open source ones, they are there. And the technology is actually catching up, and it has really caught up, and it's continuing to change. We're having things like motion capture now, whereby you can even move things around. All you have to do is wear a suit and move around. Although now with that, you still need to learn how to keyframe, because you need to clean up your animation. Okay, you need to do what we call animation cleanup. So it sounds easy, but it is not. So you need to learn keyframing and learn it nicely. There's also AI motion capture. Everybody else is complaining about AI For animators, we've been using AI for the longest time ever. We do our keyframes, the software does the rest. We choose a paint, the software helps us with blend modes and things like that. We put some lighting in there, the software does the rest after you've done the calculations over there and decided these are the number of bouncing of lights I need. This is the amount of global illumination I need. You see, we've been using AI sort of in the back end. Although for us being a creative area, AI might not help us that much because it's all about telling a story and understanding what goes on under the hood for you to take advantage of that. I know the latest 3D Max 2025 has, I think it's TIE Fusion. Yeah, it's TIE Fusion. Has been incorporated into the viewport of 3D Max 2025. And it's able to change maybe textures and the artistic look. But at the end of the day, you'll have to instruct it. You'll have to do the heavy lifting. From there, all it does is complement your efforts. It actually helps complement your efforts. So as time goes by, things are getting to change, and we are getting better and better as we move along. Now, does 3D have advantages or disadvantages? And the answer is yes. It does have advantages and it does have its disadvantages. Now, you see, it's considered one of the best types with so many benefits because of what we've talked about. And there's even more than what we've talked about. The advantages of 3D animation has helped several industries achieve what they want, from advertising to animated series. Okay, these advantages of 3D animation make it extremely powerful. It's an extremely powerful tool. Okay, now, there are a few things that you look at when you look at it as an advantage. Number one, the realistic visuals. Okay, so we do have very realistic visuals. And number two, the flexibility and the creativity in terms of character design, environments, and camera angles. 3D has a very much needed flexibility because it's like having a virtual world in theirs, and artists can manipulate and control every aspect of the scene through flexible camera angles, allowing for endless creative results. So yeah, that's a very good advantage because the flexibility, okay, and the creativity. Now, apart from that, there is the scene depth. Okay, scene depth. Okay, we are calling it 3D, three-dimensional space. Okay, we see in 3D ourselves. Okay, so it brings a third dimension to everything. Okay, and in order to create engaging animated worlds, you need that. You need that depth over there. 3D animation can also, it can perceive distances because you can see distances. You can see objects being rotated, moved, objects interacting with the environment, like things like fog. You can see that, like, for example, in the image that I'm already sharing, you can see all the way into the distance over there. Now, this gives you a sense of volume and depth, which is really not possible with 2D drawings. Well, some people are really good at 2D drawings. They could try get the depth, but they work a little bit harder than their 3D counterparts. Now, there's also real-time interactivity. As we said, these days, real-time 3D is quite accessible. Case in point, in ADMI, we are using Unreal Engine, which is very, very interactive. Whether you're doing video games, virtual reality experiences, augmented reality, the interactivity and responsiveness of 3D allows it to transcend the limitations of 2D. So yeah, that is one thing. Now, cost and time efficiency. Okay. Now, while the 3D animation pipeline may require significant software effort, computing power, time, and costs, once the assets are made and created, they can be reused for future projects. Like, for example, you're doing a series. Once you model and read your character, that's it. All you have to do is just animate it going forward. You already have that. They're already immortalized over there. Now, you can have long-running shows, okay? You can make different iterations for your architect friend, for your motion graphics. Already you have everything in there. You can change it on the fly. So yeah, so it's cost-effective in the long run. If you look at it, it's quite cost-effective. Now, it enhances storytelling as another thing. Now, it takes advantage from its technical perspective, in terms of storytelling, it's a powerful tool, okay, to convey emotions for filmmakers, storytellers, and animators. Complex sequences, like spatial transitions, accurate perspective shifts. So it can really tell some good stories. And the camera work in there is same as the camera work in live shot, only that you're dealing with it within a virtual environment. So, and also its versatility across industries. So we've just spoken of things like film, television, architecture, engineering, science, and manufacturing also use it. Product design, the same. So you're only limited by your own creativity. It's just your creativity that limits you. The number of things you can do are endless. So it's very versatile. Any industry can be able to use 3D animation. Now, there's also the whole issue of simulations, physics simulations in there, which also work very nicely. Prototyping, you want to prototype a product very fast and test it out, testing out concepts, that works very well. And also global collaborations. And this has become a really key thing, global collaborations. You notice that most shows are written in one continent, done in another continent, and finished in another continent. So while there are many artists around the world, global collaboration is needed, and different artists in different fields for different projects. One of the best ways is to create an animation. That way, you can actually collaborate. And there are so many tools for us to be able to collaborate. And even our DCC apps allows it for us to be able to collaborate. Now, there's also longevity and preservation. 3D animation is preserving visual content for the long term. Digital files of 3D animations can be stored, archived without degradation. Okay, and in the future, people are going to still be able to enjoy our animated content. Now, it all sounds good, but there's also, you'll always find a few cons, okay? It's not always very the cost of production is not always very, very, very cheap. It could be costly, okay? It's time intensive because of the number of processes you need in the whole production pipeline. You find it's time consuming processes at different stages, modeling, texturing, rigging, lighting, rendering. It's time intensive, but it pays off in the end. It has a steep learning curve, okay? Software hardware requirements, although this is getting better with time. Okay, now render times, now it's getting better. We are not limited by artistic styles. So all these are a few things here and there that could be cons of the same, but at the end of the day, it heavily pays off. So what is the future? Because yes, a lot of people are afraid of the future, and things are changing at a very fast pace. People are doing different things. Technology is growing. So what is this future? The future of 3D animation is actually limitless. All right. So it is limitless in what sense? Over the years, technology has advanced animation further than most could have imagined. You see, 10 years ago, people would not have imagined a time will come when you're able to do augmented reality or virtual reality. People could not even imagine that. Each year we have new tools and techniques that allow us to create things quicker and easier than the year before. Each consecutive release of these DCC apps, be it 3D animation or those game engines, they are making things faster and faster. Before then, even game engines for things like interactive media, we had a problem there because for interactive media, for interactive media, we had a major problem because we were limited by the number of polygons that we could put in there. And that was a major hindrance. And now, like in the last 2 years, Unreal Engine has come up with a technology called Nanite. And Nanite now, polygons are no longer a problem. You can put as many as you wish, and Nanite is still going to work at 60 frames per second. For those of you are not into the animation space, it means it's almost real time. You can really play it and it won't lag or hang in any way. So you can put like 1 billion trees in there. You can do a whole rainforest and still be able to run it, even in a machine that is not very high end. It's still going to work. So yeah, we are getting things getting quicker. Everywhere you're getting mobile devices, next generation gaming systems, and a lot of things are coming in. Okay, the growing demand for quality of animation and interactive media. And these days, the audience, no matter what age group, is increasingly getting savvy in their knowledge of navigating interactive content. So it doesn't matter age groups anymore. I mean, everybody now is savvy. Majority of people are savvy in terms of using interactive content. It is one thing to watch great animation, but the audience wants to experience this content in their own way. And 3D animation is going to allow you to do that. The digital economy will lead the digital economy is going to be a lead in the economy in terms of bringing in more money. Right now, like for example, let me say in the times of COVID, during COVID, a lot of industries were shutting down, but animation was actually taking off because people at home, they need entertainment, whether it is games, whether it is animations. Live shots became a problem because of social distancing. But now, if we are doing an animation and we are collaborating all over the world, we are not really in the same place. We are actually social distancing ourselves already, and we are doing it virtually. So it continues growing even when the world shut down. It continued growing. So animation will be used in all areas of our lives. And the real limitation is going to be our imagination. So by learning animation, and especially 3D animation, you'll have a skill that is going to have longevity. You'll have a skill that can work in very many sectors, as we've just looked at, very, very many. It is you to choose which sector to delve into, but the tool is the same. The foundations are the same. So by getting a good partner to train you, okay, or upskill you when it comes to 3D animation, then you're well on your way into having a very profitable career going forward. Career whereby you can do self-pacing, you can do your own movies back at home. You can get them as a freelance. You can get employed in a company or in a studio. You can work in a team that does a lot of gaming and all that. So it is wide open. At the end of the day, it's totally wide open. You're only limited by your own imagination. So yeah, 3D animation is very fulfilling, and animation in general. And if I were you, I would have started it like yesterday. That is one thing that I would have done, because once you start learning it, there is no stopping. You continue growing as the years go by. So with that, I think I'll leave it there for maybe any questions, and maybe just throw it back to Rachel for maybe any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Benjamin, for this insightful session. We've learned a lot. There has been a lot of engagement on the chat function. I hope I'll capture all the comments and the questions that have been shared by our attendees. Let me begin by sharing Rupert's comments. Guhad was asking, I feel like 2D animation, there are two types of methods, the frame by frame and cutout. Which one do you think is better?
Well, as I had intimated earlier, the output is what is important. You see, for the audience, it doesn't matter whether it is cutout or frame by frame. To them, they just want to watch great animation. That's all they want to watch. So behind the scenes now depends on your technical abilities. If you're very artistic and you can do frame by frame, then that's good. If you're not very artistic and you want to do cutout, then still that is fine. It depends on the output. What story are you telling? It reminds me of an analogy whereby there's a bakery that uses an oven, and there is a lady somewhere who is using a charcoal jiko, a sufuria, and putting charcoal on top. They both produce bread, but the ingredients and the taste depends on the baker. What ingredients did they use? So it depends on your technicality, Mr. Guhad.
Okay, thank you. Then Adams is asking, is script development a key element in animated stories?
Adams, yes. Without the script, there is no story. The script is everything. In fact, right now, dare say, in the country, what we are lacking is really good script writers for especially children's content, because we're having a lot of people doing grown-up content. Children's content, we're having a major problem with that. So the technicality of doing the animation is there, but the story is not there. So we end up creating really nice 3D models that don't tell a story. So it is key. It is the number one.
Okay, thank you. Here's a comment from Winnie Animation. They're saying script development is important. The audience or end user, if user games have to be engaged.
Yeah, true. I agree. Without even video games, because people think video games don't have scripts. Video games must have scripts, backstories, and everything. So all we are talking about in terms of these 3D creations and all that, everything has a script. Even a motion graphic, it has a script. Without a good script, then there's nothing much you're doing. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Then Adams again is here asking, now that 3D animation can achieve realism in advertising, how does one deal with ethical issues of deceptive advertising?
Well, now that goes beyond the artist, because now that one, we as the artist, we're just given a brief. This is what you're doing. Our product is able to heal malaria in like a day. So you see, for us, all we are doing is just implementing what the client is asking for. Okay. So we cannot go now working around that. That would be very hard for us. Now that goes to the copywriters within the advertising agencies. Now that question would be good for them.
Okay, we do have a very interesting question here from Helen Waura. Her question is, what is the market uptake of 3D animation in Kenya? It seems like most advertising agencies still prefer 2D instead of 3D animation for their clients. Making 3D animators is not very marketable.
Well, it depends. When you say 3D, it depends, because you see now you've already narrowed it down to advertising. Okay, just advertising. So if you look at advertising, yeah, the uptake is not very much in advertising, but the uptake is there in architectural visualization. The guys are doing well. In fact, the person who won the last Africa, it's called what? Best Akvis Africa, that was held in Dubai this year. His name is Karim. He's a former student of mine. He's doing just purely architectural visualization. And a lot of games are also coming up. So in the advertising space, and even, by the way, as I showed you earlier, it may look 2D, but it's actually 3D. The finish is 3D, but most of them usually take 2D because of the turnaround times, okay, and the budgets that they have. Turnaround times and budgets that they have. But all the other facets are also uptaking 3D a lot, not just the marketing and not just the advertising side. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. There's another question here. Most African stories have yet to be told through animation. What is the way forward to have our stories in the world of animation?
Well, it's for us to animate them. There's no other two ways about. As you've noticed, most of my projects are African. It's for us to be able to just animate, and they are really growing. If you notice in the last few, from last year, like Super Sema, whatnot, everybody's coming back here. Although you notice most of the stories, they are written abroad, and then they are called African, and they are not done here. So here, our main problem is funding, and I hope we are going to get to a point where funding is going to be to get easier as we go along. Collaboration is another area, and this issue of us doing even African stories and collaborating has been heavily spoken of in the Animation Association of Kenya, where I'm a member. And we've really tried to speak about this in terms of how do we collaborate and bring people together. So we are the ones to do this. The world cannot help us. It is us to be able to do this.
One question from Collins Ngetich. I'm a media student focused on video and photo editing, and I'm now interested in animation. Maybe what are the specs of laptop specs or computer that can help me to do animation efficiently?
Well, that's a very wide question, Collins. But the easiest thing I tell people, if it can play, I hope you play games. If it can play Need for Speed, then chances are it will do animation. So you must have a very good graphics card in there. The higher spec, the better. Okay. So I usually tell people, if you're in doubt, look for a gaming laptop. So a gaming laptop is going to be able to help you do that.
Okay, thanks. I hope Said had also asked the same question. So I hope you've been answered.
Yeah, for Said, I see you've mentioned Unreal Engine. Yeah, Unreal Engine, you need a high spec card, mostly GTX from 2080 and above. Although GTX cards can also work. The good thing with Unreal Engine, you can always reduce the resolution, the kind of the resolution within the display over there, the software itself, so that it can take care of those small other cards. But from GTX, from RTX 2080 and above, yeah. For Blender, you're free, you're good. As long as it can play a game, then it's fine.
Okay. Gohad is here again with another question. Basically, in animation, in particular 3D, does it mean that you, the creative, is God?
Yes, something like you're creating everything. You know, you're the one creating everything, from a blade of grass and all that. Yeah. You're the creator, actually. You're creating.
Okay. Victor Isika, he's asking, what are the ways or platforms that one can upskill in the animation industry?
Training, sir. Training is everything. We don't have very many platforms. The key thing is you need structured training. And with structured training, you need to get into upskilling into a place like, if you come to ADMI, depending on where you are at within your animation, if you're corporate, maybe you're not coming in as just a normal student, you're at a certain place you want to upskill, we can be able to guide you. I think even Rachel can guide you on how that can be done. So training is everything, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see if we have two more. Can one do animation using a phone?
Yeah, Blender. By the way, Blender came up with a phone. It's more of a parody, but it works, but not really. I would rather, you need a bigger screen anyway, because you need your mouse, your keyboard. But I cannot rule it out really, because there are some web-based 3D softwares, free web-based, and Blender did. Somebody programmed some Blender for the phone. But I would highly suggest you just use a normal screen, at least even a 14-inch or even an iPad, but you need your keyboard, your mouse to navigate most of these things here.
Okay, thank you. Gitonga, you're asking how much we charge for animation. Please call us via 0706349696 and we will answer your inquiry. So I think we are almost coming to the end of our session. Benjamin, this has been amazing. Our participants are happy. Actually, others are asking when the next session is. We will let you know in due time when the next session will happen. So Benjamin, before we close, give us your parting shot. What are some of the words of wisdom that you can share with us before we close?
Patience, focus. That's it. Patience and focus. If you want to start something, start it today. For 3D animation, I know a lot of times you're told, start with what you have. And yes, for 3D animation, it's actually true. We have free softwares. Start with what you have and begin growing from there.
Hey. Thank you so much. So before we wrap up, I just want to let everyone know that ADMI offers a comprehensive diploma in 3D animation. So if you're inspired by today's session and interested in pursuing a career in animation, our program provides the skills and knowledge that you need to bring your creative visions to life. So do not hesitate to get in touch with us via email or via phone calls. I've really appreciated the fact that you were engaging. It was a very insightful session. Next week, but one, on the 15th and the 16th, we have two other webinars, but one is for graphic design and another one for music production. We'll let you know when we'll have the next one for animation. But until next time, have a nice time. Goodbye. Have a nice evening.